Della Whitfield came off the night wash with her hands cracked white from lye. She went straight to the flour bin. Two girls do not stop being hungry just because their mother worked till dawn. So she did not sit down. She needed. 11 months a rancher ate at her boarding house table and watched her do it. Then one morning, on the depot platform, in front of 40 travelers waiting on the 810 eastbound, Silas Renner took off his hat and said it out loud. "Marry me, Della, and I'll make it right." The platform went dead quiet. She did not say yes. She looked at the crowd, not at him. And she said, "Then you'll answer 4 things where these people can hear you. If you believe love is built with 2 pairs of hands, this story is for you." Before we go on, subscribe so this story finds you again. And tell me one thing. Comment the town you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to the start of it. Ochre Springs, Montana, spring of 1890. Montana had been a state for all of a few months, and it still didn't quite believe it. The Northern Pacific ran a line through, and the town had grown up along that line like weeds along a fence. Section crews. A boarding house. A bank with a new brass plate on the door, and a woman who washed for all of them by night. That was Della Whitfield. She was 34. She had been a widow for 4 winters. The fever took her husband one January, quick and cruel, and left her with 2 girls and a washboard. She did the night wash for the section crews and for the Halloran boarding house. 75 cents a dozen shirts. On a good week, she cleared about $5. Her hands showed every cent of it. You have to understand what night wash is. It is not a metaphor for hard work. It is boiling water hauled by the bucket. It is lye that eats the skin off your knuckles. It is standing over a tub while the town sleeps, wringing out other people's shirts, so that in the morning those shirts are clean and folded, and nobody thinks about the woman who made them so. The work is invisible on purpose. That was the shape of her whole life. Invisible on purpose. But here is the thing about Della, and it is the thing you must hold on to for the rest of this story. She kept her own books. Every laundry account she ran in her own name at the Ochre Springs Bank. There was a new territorial law that let a married woman hold property in her own name, same as a single one always could. Most women didn't know the law existed. Della knew. She'd read it herself, slow, with her finger on the line, at the front desk of that bank, and she had made them write her name. That was her pride. Not a ribbon, not a Sunday dress, a ledger with her name on it. She had 2 daughters. Josephine, who everyone called Jo, was 14, sharp as a tack and twice as protective. Jo kept the tally book for her mother, every account, every dozen shirts, every dime owed and paid, in her own careful hand. Jo wanted one thing in this world. She wanted to finish school. She had watched her mother's hands, and she had decided very young that she would earn her bread some other way. The younger one was Cora. 11, softer. She wanted to belong somewhere solid, somewhere that wasn't a rented room over a laundry. Cora was the kind of child who leaned toward warmth like a plant leans toward a window. Della fed them first. Always, she put the food in front of the girls, and she watched them eat, and only when they were full did she take what was left. She ate last, or she ate cold, or some nights she said she wasn't hungry and drank a cup of tea and called it supper. And she never once cried where they could see. She saved that for the wash tub, if she saved it at all. The steam gave her cover. One evening, over the tally book, Jo was muttering about the accounts. She came to a name, an old one, closed out years back, and she said, "Half to herself, mister. Voss still owes us for that. In my head, anyway." Della didn't look up. She said it lightly, the way you brush a crumb off a table. A promise Harlan made me over that stove, and there was no one in the room but the stove. That was all. She turned the page. Jo moved on to the next column. and the moment passed like it was nothing. Remember it. It was not nothing. Now, the rancher. Silas Renner was 41. He had land north of town, cattle on it, and a house that was too big and too quiet. His mother, Verna, had run that house for 19 years, since his own father passed. Silas was not a talker. He was one of those men who says 3 words where another man says 30, and means all 3. For 11 months he had taken his supper at the Halloran boarding house table, and for 11 months he had watched Della Whitfield come in off the night wash with her hands raw and go straight to the flour bin to feed her girls. He said little about it. But he watched. And a watching man is a thinking man, whether or not the town gives him credit for it. One evening it was cold. Della came in late, and there was a yoke of scalding wash water she still had to carry across the yard to the tubs, 2 full buckets on a wooden shoulder yoke, the kind that leaves a woman's wrists trembling by the 3rd trip. She reached for it. Silas got there first. He didn't make a show of it. He didn't say a word about chivalry. He just lifted the yoke onto his own shoulders. And he carried the scalding water across the yard, and he set it down by the tubs so her wrists could rest. Then he went back to his supper. That was all. But in a town like Ochre Springs, a rancher carrying a laundress's wash water is not a small thing. It is a very loud thing, done very quietly. The town started to talk. By the next morning, half of Ochre Springs knew that Silas Renner had carried Della Whitfield's water, and the other half found out by noon. Della knew what it looked like. She was not a fool about men. She was, if anything, too careful about them. But she also felt the ache leave her wrists that night, and she was honest enough with herself to notice that a man had, for once, made her work lighter instead of heavier. That was the first degree of trust. 1. Banked. But nothing in this life comes clean of trouble, and Della's trouble had a name that Spring. It was spoken of in the bank, and at the feed store, and in low voices at the boarding house table. The Renner land carried a note. It was held by a company down the line, the Meridian Stock and Land Company, $940 owing. And this was a lean spring on the range, a cold one, grass slow to come, and cattle slow to fatten. $940. To Della, who cleared $5 in a good week, that number was the size of a mountain. She heard it spoken, and she filed it away, the way she filed everything away, in a ledger in her head. Her daughters had opinions, and they did not match. Joe warned her flat. Joe had watched too much, and she had inherited her mother's habit of keeping accounts. Only Joe's accounts were of men, and men came up short in them. She said it plain across the tally book one night. The last one talked kind too, Mama. She didn't have to say the name. The name was Voss, and it sat in the room whether they spoke it or not. Cora had been up to the Renner place. Della hadn't sent her. The girl had gone up with the Halloran boy on some errand and come back full of it. There was a real kitchen up there, she said. A garden gone to seed, but ready to come back. A window that looked out on the whole valley. Cora had loved it, and she said so, and there was a hunger in the way she said it that made Della's chest go tight. Because Cora wanted somewhere solid, and Della could not give her a window on a valley. Della could give her a rented room, and a full plate, and a mother who ate last. 2 daughters. 2 verdicts. One saying, "Be careful." One saying, "Please." And Della, standing in the middle of them, did what she always did. She kept working. She kept her own counsel. And she waited because she did not yet know what she was waiting for. She found out on the depot platform. It was a bright, hard morning. The 810 eastbound was in and boarding, steam coming off her in the cold, the conductor calling, trunks going up. 40-odd travelers milling on the platform with their tickets and their bundles and their business. It was the busiest the town got. Everybody's eyes were somewhere. Everybody was a witness without meaning to be. Della was there with a delivery. Clean linens for a family taking the eastbound, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string, carried against her hip. Ordinary work. She meant to hand it over and go back to her tubs. Silas Renner came across the platform toward her, and there was something in the set of his shoulders that made the people nearest go quiet, the way animals go quiet before weather. He took off his hat. He held it against his chest. And in front of 40 travelers waiting on the 810 eastbound, in a voice pitched to Carrie, Silas Renner said, "Marry me, Della, and I'll make it right." The platform went dead quiet. Even the engines seemed to hush. 40 faces turned. A woman near the ticket window put her hand to her mouth. And Silas stood there, hat in hand, and, I'll tell you the truth of it, he was enjoying it. He was a man who believed in the grand gesture. He believed that the size of the moment was the size of the promise. He had done the biggest thing he knew how to do, out loud, in front of the whole town, and he stood there proud of it, waiting for her to weep and say yes. But Della Whitfield understood something in that 1 second that Silas Renner did not understand, and would not understand for a long while yet. She understood that a private promise to a woman in her position is worth nothing, because she had had one. A promise made in a kitchen with no one in the room but the stove can be walked back. Quietly, in the week it would cost the man something, and the town will believe whatever the man decides to let it believe. She had survived exactly that. She had the scars of it, only they didn't show on her hands, they showed somewhere deeper. A promise made in front of 40 people cannot be softened. That is the whole difference. That is the engine of everything that comes after. Hold it. So she did not weep. She did not say yes. She looked at the crowd, not at him, at the crowd, at all those faces that had gone still, and she said, in a voice as level as a laid table, "Then you'll answer 4 things where these people can hear you." You could feel the platform lean in. Silas's smile flickered. This was not the script he'd written in his head. In his head she said yes, and he was a hero. He said, "Half a laugh in it, Della. We can talk terms at the house." No, not loud. Just certain. And then she said the line that half that platform would repeat for the rest of their lives. "A condition I don't say in front of these people is a condition that doesn't exist." Nobody moved. The conductor, God bless him, held the train. You do not interrupt a thing like that. "Term 1, Della said. And she said it to the crowd, to the witnesses, not to him. "Both my girls are schooled through 16. Joe and Cora, both, to 16, no matter the year, no matter the season, no matter the price of cattle." A murmur. Somebody nodded. Term 2. Her voice didn't shake. 11 months of watching had taught him she was steady, but this was steady of another order. "My laundry accounts stay in my own name at the bank. Married or not. They were mine before you asked, and they stay mine after." That one landed hard on the crowd, because half of them didn't know a woman could, and the other half didn't know one would say so out loud. Term 3. And here, just for a breath, you could hear what it cost her. "I do not resume the night wash. I've boiled my last tub of other men's shirts by lamplight. I'll work. God knows I'll work. But not that. Not anymore." 3 terms, said to the town. And the 810 sat there, breathing steam, and the clock over the ticket window ticked, and everyone on that platform understood, whether they had the words for it or not, that they were watching a woman turn a man's grand gesture into something that could be held against him. She was making him sign in front of witnesses. She was making the town the ledger. Silas stood in it. And now, the man showed. Because the gesture was done, and this was the part he hadn't planned, and a lesser man would have laughed it off or gotten hard about it. Silas Renner did neither. He put his hat back on his head, slow. He set his feet. And he answered her. "Yes," he said, to term 1. Clear enough to carry. Both girls. To 16. My word on it, in front of these people. Yes, he said to term 2. Your name on your own books. I wouldn't have it otherwise. It's yours. He paused before the third. Not from doubt. From something like feeling. Then, yes, no more night wash. You've done your last tub. And there was a low sound from the crowd at that, something almost like approval, because they had all worn her clean shirts and none of them had ever thought about her wrists. 3 yeses. In the same air the questions were asked. The crowd was the ledger, and every yes went down in it. And here is where you lean in, because most women would have stopped. 3 good terms, 3 good yeses, in front of the whole town. She had won more than any woman in Ochre Springs had ever thought to ask for. The smart thing, the safe thing, was to stop. She wasn't finished. Della Whitfield drew a breath, and she named the 4th, and the ranch house is run by one woman. She said it slow, so there'd be no mistaking it later. From the day I come, it's me. Ochre Renner is kin, she's welcome, she's family, she's owed every respect a mother is owed, but she is not mistress of my kitchen. One woman runs the house, and it's the wife. Now, you have to understand who was standing on that platform. Ochre Renner had run that house for 19 years, and Verna's neighbors were right there, the women she took communion beside, the women she'd buried husbands beside. And Della named that term with all of them listening. It was, on its face, an unkind thing to say about a woman she would have to live beside for the rest of her life. It was ungracious, it would sting, and it would be repeated, and it would cost her before she ever set foot in that house. She said it anyway. Because a condition not stated is a condition that doesn't exist. Because she had learned, in the hardest school there is, that the thing you don't nail down in the light is the thing that gets quietly taken from you in the dark. And Silas Renner hesitated. This was the crack. Not the smiling man of the grand gesture. A real man cornered by a real thing, in public, with his mother's friends watching. Because the first 3 terms cost him only money and habit. This one cost him peace at his own hearth. This one meant going home and telling his mother that a laundress had, in front of her whole church, named her a guest in the kitchen she'd ruled for 19 years. He hesitated. And Della saw it. And in that half-second the old fear came up in her like cold water, because a man who hesitates is a man leaving himself a door, and she knew all about doors, she'd been walked out of one, and her blind spot nearly did its work, nearly told her this was Harlan Voss all over again, wearing a rancher's coat. But then Silas Renner did the bravest small thing in this whole story. He looked at her, not at the crowd this time, and he said it. Yes, one word. And the 810 eastbound chose that exact moment to pull out. The whistle blew, long, and the couplings groaned, and the great wheels bit and turned, and the train pulled away east down the line, and his yes went out on the sound of it, carried off down the valley like the town was witness, and the whole prairie besides. Before the train pulled out, she'd said 4 things where the people could hear, and he'd answered all 4 before the eastbound cleared the platform. You'd think that was the end of the asking. It was barely the middle of it. They didn't fall into each other's arms. That's not the kind of people they were, and it's not the kind of story this is. The crowd broke up slow, buzzing, and the linens still had to be delivered, and Della delivered them, hands steady, and walked home. But something had changed, and everyone felt it. Silas came to her that same week. Not to sweep her off her feet. He came to her table, in the front room over the laundry, and he brought the Meridian papers with him. The note. $940, the terms of it. The 60 days. And here is the 2nd degree, and I want you to see it clear. A lesser man would have kept those papers to himself. Would have said, "Don't you worry your head about the note, that's man's business. Silas Renner took off his hat at her own table, and he laid the Meridian papers down in front of her, and he asked her to read them. Because she kept books. Because he had said yes to her name on her own accounts, and he was a man who, once he'd said a thing in front of 40 people, meant to live inside it. She read them. In her own name, at her own table, with her finger on the line the way she'd read the law at the bank. She read the whole of his trouble. 940 owing, 60 days, a lean spring. She didn't flinch from it. That was proof 2. 2 degrees. And while he sat there, Joe came in. Joe, 14, sharp, protective, the keeper of the tally book, who had said the last one talked kind too. Joe looked at this big, quiet rancher at her mother's table, and she decided to test him. She did it the way a smart, frightened child does it. She went straight for the wound. "Mr. Renner," Joe said, "do you know a man named Harlan Voss?" The room went still. Della's hand stopped on the page. Now watch what Silas does, because a weak man answers a child's hard question to the mother, looks over the child's head to the grown-up, and lets the grown-up handle it, makes the child small. Silas Renner turned in his chair and faced Joe, 14 years old, arms crossed, chin up, ready to hate him. And he answered her. Not Della. Her. "I know the name," he said, plain. "I know some of what it means in this house, and I expect I don't know all of it, and I'm not going to pretend I do. But I'll tell you this, since you asked me and not your mother, and since you're the one keeps the books." He nodded at the tally book under her arm. "Whatever that man promised and didn't keep, I said mine out loud where a whole town heard it. You can hold me to every word. You especially. You keep the account." Joe didn't soften right away. Joe was not built to soften fast. But something in her face shifted, a girl who had braced for a man to talk over her, and instead got a man who talked to her, who handed her the tally book like it was a thing of weight. That was the 3rd degree, and Silas didn't even know he'd earned it. Joe did. Joe wrote it down somewhere no ledger could hold. 3 degrees. Banked. That should have been enough for Della. 3 proofs, 4 public yeses, a man reading her books at her table and answering her child to her child's face. Any other woman would have rested on it. But Della Whitfield did not rest on a good morning. She had rested on a good morning once, 5 years back, over a stove, with no one in the room but the stove. She had learned that a morning is a fragile thing, and a memory is fragile too, and that people forget, and men most of all, and that the only thing that doesn't forget is a record. So that same day, before the shine wore off, before the town went back to its business and started to misremember what it had heard, Della Whitfield walked down to the depot. The station agent at Ochre Springs was a man named Amos Teal. 55, dry, precise, the keeper of the Northern Pacific Freight Ledger, the big bound book where every crate and consignment and car that came through that station got written down in his careful hand. Amos Teal had been on that platform. He had heard every word. He was, though he'd never have used the phrase, the quiet instrument of the whole thing. Della came to his window. She waited while he finished a line. Then she said it, low, so it stayed between them. "Mr. Teal, you heard what was said on the platform this morning, the 4 things I asked, and the 4 things he answered." "I did," said Amos. "Whole town did. The town forgets." She set her raw hands flat on his counter. "I've been forgotten before, Mr. Teal, on the strength of a promise. I'd take it kindly if you'd write it down. The 4 terms and his 4 answers in the back of your ledger. Where it keeps. So, the platform isn't the only thing that remembers." Amos Teal looked at her a long moment. He was a man who understood the weight of a written line better than any preacher understood a spoken one. He knew that a thing in his ledger was a thing that outlived the mouth that said it. He knew, too, exactly why a woman like Della Whitfield would come and ask him to make it so. He turned the big book to its back pages. He uncapped his ink. He dipped the pen. And Della stood at the window, watching the nib come down toward the clean page, the page that would outlive the morning, outlive the gossip, outlive every man's convenient memory, and she felt something she had not let herself feel in 4 winters. She felt, for one breath, held. Amos Teal touched the pen to the paper. Term 1, Della said. Both girls, schooled through 16. The nib began to move. And what neither of them knew, what nobody in Ochre Springs knew yet, was that a page in a freight ledger was about to become the most important thing in 3 lives. Because there was a night coming, in a lean month, in a kitchen with no witnesses, when a man would hesitate 1 second too long over $4.50. And on that night, everything would turn on whether the platform was the only thing that remembered. It wasn't going to be. But that's chapter 2. The wedding was small. It had to be. A widow of 34 and a rancher of 41 do not throw the kind of party a first marriage throws. There was a preacher, a plain ring, and a supper Werner Renner did not cook. That last part told Della everything. She came to the ranch on a Tuesday. The wagon carried 3 trunks, a tally book under Joe's arm, and Cora up front already pointing at the barn. Silas drove. He did not say much. He never said much. But he handed each of them down himself, one at a time, and he carried the trunks in without being asked. The house was bigger than any Della had washed for, and the kitchen was cold. Not the stove. The stove was hot enough. It was Verna who was cold. She stood at the counter with her sleeves pushed up and her hands in the bread, and she did not turn around when Della came in. 19 years that woman had run this house. 19 years of knowing where every spoon lived, and now a laundress had stood on a public platform and named her a guest in front of her own neighbors. There's coffee, Verna said. To the wall. Thank you, Della said. That was the whole conversation. Della understood it. She did not like it, but she understood it. A woman does not surrender 19 years to a stranger and smile about it. So Della did not push. She hung her own apron on her own nail, and she started learning where the spoons lived, and she let the cold be cold. The frost came that week. A late one, hard, the kind that blackens the early green and makes a rancher stand at the window, doing sums he does not say out loud. Della watched Silas do those sums. She knew the look. She had done her own sums by lamplight for 4 winters. The note was coming due. The Meridian note. $940, and the land thin under it, and the calves not yet fat enough to sell. But that was not the first thing they did together as man and wife. The first thing they did was ride to town. They stood together at the counter of the Meridian Stock and Land Company, the 2 of them, and a young clerk with ink on his cuff opened the big account book. Silas put his hand on the page. Then he looked at Della, and he did a thing Della had not seen a man do. He moved his hand over. Her name goes on there too, Silas said, beside mine, both of us on the line. The clerk blinked. It's your note, Mr. Renner. It's our note now, Silas said. Write it. The clerk wrote it. Della watched the nib spell out her name, Della Renner, and under it, in her own small firm hand, she signed it herself. Not for show. Not on a platform. In a quiet office with 1 clerk and no crowd. And something in her chest that had been braced for 4 winters loosened by a single degree. She trusted records over men. She always had. But here was a man asking the record to hold him as tight as it held her. They rode home in the cold, and she sat closer to him than she had on the way in. It was the town that broke the thing open. It always is. She was at the mercantile buying thread when she heard the 2 women behind the dry goods shelf. They did not know she was there. Or, they did not care. Named all those terms out in front of God and everybody, the first one said. Didn't used to be so particular. Well, the second one said, Lo, you'd be particular too. After Voss. Della's hand stopped on the spool. Harlan Voss, the first one said, tasting it. Now there's a name I've near forgot. Promised her the world. That one. In her own kitchen, marriage, and schooling for the girls, the whole picture. And the week it would have cost him a dime, he found himself a rich widow 2 towns over and let this whole place believe Della chased him off. The second woman clicked her tongue. No witnesses, see, just the 2 of them and the stove. So it was his word against a laundress. And whose word wins that? His, said the first. His, the second agreed. Della set the thread down. She walked out into the street. She did not buy it after all. She had known all this. She had lived all this. But hearing it said by a stranger's mouth laid out plain, a promise Harlan made me over that stove, and there was no one in the room but the stove, she understood, standing in the cold road that the whole town understood her now. Understood why she had turned a proposal into a public contract. Why she would not take a yes said in a kitchen when she could have 4 yeses said in front of 40 travelers. And Silas understood it too. She could see it in his face, at supper. Somebody had told him. He looked at her across the table like a man who had finally read the last page of a book and found out the story was not the one he thought. I thought the asking was the hard part, he said, quiet, after the girls were up the stairs. Standing up on that platform. Taking off my hat. I thought that was the brave thing. I know you did, Della said. It wasn't. No, she said. It wasn't. Then the note came due. It came due in the leanest week of a lean month. The calves not sold. The frost-killed grass. $940 owing, 60 days gone down to 9, and a man staring at figures that would not add. Della was in the hall that night. Late. She had come down for water, in her stocking feet, quiet the way a night-wash laundress learns to be quiet. And she stopped at the kitchen door because the lamp was on, and Verna and Silas were at the table with the papers spread between them. She did not mean to listen. But she heard her own daughter's name. Cora, Verna was saying. Low, reasonable, the voice of a woman who has done 19 years of hard economies. It's only the one term. Silas. The district school. $4.50. She's 11. She'll not miss a single winter of sums. And no one need know. We pull her the one term, we put that toward the note, and by spring the calves sell and she's back at her desk, and none the wiser. Della stood in the dark hall, $4.50, and she waited for her husband to say no. She waited for him to say it the way he had said yes on the platform. Fast, clean, out loud. Term 1. Both girls schooled through 16. She waited for that. Silas did not say no. He hesitated. It was 1 second. Maybe 2. A man cornered by a number, tired, with the land under his feet in the balance, looking down at a figure that would not add, and for 1 second he did not say no. That second was the whole world, because Della had heard that exact silence before. In a kitchen. Over a stove. From a man named Harlan Voss, the week of promise would have cost him something. This was the same shape, the same revision, in the same kind of room, where no one was meant to hear. She did not shout. She had never once cried where they could see, and she did not start now. She went up the stairs. She woke the girls gentle. She packed the 3 trunks in the dark. And by the time the lamp downstairs went out, Della Renner had her daughter's and her tally book and her own 2 hands, and she walked out the front door toward the road to town, toward the laundry room she had never once given up. Because a woman who trusts records over men does not close her own account at the bank on the strength of a wedding. Silas caught her at the gate. Della, I asked you where they could hear you, she said. She did not raise her voice. That was the terrible part. She was level as still water. Every one of those 4 things I made you say where the whole platform could hear. And this. This you did where they couldn't. I didn't say yes to it. You didn't say no. She looked at him. That's the whole difference, Silas. I learned that difference 4 winters before I ever met you. Good night, and she walked. Joe on one side, Cora on the other, quiet, not understanding, only knowing her mother's hand was tight. Silas did not chase her with words. He had tried words once, on a platform, and words were the thing he was good at and the thing that had never once been the point. He stood at his own gate and let her go, and he finally understood, all the way down, what she had understood in a single second the day he took off his hat. The gesture was never the commitment. The terms were the commitment. And he had let one of them wobble in a room with no witnesses, which was the only place a term could die. He had 3 days to fix it. He used every one. On Saturday, the 8:10 eastbound was boarding. The same platform. The same crowd, more or less, the drummers with their sample cases, the ranch families in for supplies, the section men, 40 travelers give or take, waiting on the eastbound with their bags at their feet. And Amos Teal out from behind his window, which he was never out from behind, with the big freight ledger under his arm. Della was there. She had not planned to be. But Joe had come running from the depot, saying Silas Renner was standing up on the platform with Mr. Teal and the ledger, and Della had put down the brown paper package of clean linens she was carrying, and she had gone. Silas stood where he had stood the first time, hat in his hand, but he was not enjoying it now. There was no gesture left in him. He looked like a man about to hand over something that cost. Mr. Teal, Silas said, loud enough to carry. That book of yours. The back page. The morning I asked Della Whitfield to marry me, she asked you to write down the 4 things she named and the 4 things I answered. Would you read it? Out loud. To these people. The platform went quiet the way it had gone quiet the first morning. Amos Teal opened the ledger to the back. He put on his spectacles. And he read, in the flat, careful voice of a man who reads figures for a living. Term 1. Both girls schooled through 16. Answer, yes, a pause. Term 2. Her laundry accounts kept in her own name. Answer, yes, another. Term 3. She does not resume the night wash. Answer, yes, he looked up once, then down. Term 4. The ranch house is run by one woman, and from the day he comes it is her, and Verna Renner is kin, not mistress of the kitchen. Answer, Amos let it sit. Yes, he closed the book. Silas turned to the crowd, to all 40 of them. You heard those read, he said. Now hear this. 3 nights ago I sat in my own kitchen with the note on my land come due. And a small economy was put to me. Pull my youngest from 1 term of school, $4.50. Nobody need know. His jaw worked. And I didn't say no. Not fast. Not the way I said yes to all 4 of these where you could hear me. I let it sit 1 second too long. Nobody on the platform moved. That 1 second, Silas said, is the whole difference between a man and a promise. My wife knew it the day I proposed. It took me till 3 nights ago to learn it. He turned his hat in his hands. So I'm saying the rest of it out here, where it counts. The notes met. I sold stock to meet it. Honest cattle for an honest debt. And this morning I sold my saddle horse, the good one, the one some of you have offered to buy off me for 4 years, and I drew the girl's schooling money out separate and put it by its own self at the bank where it can never again be 1 term, nobody need know. Both girls. Through 16. Same as I said the first time. Only this time there's no lean month can touch it. He put his hat back on. That's all, he said. That's all I came to say. And Della, standing at the edge of the crowd with lye-cracked hands, felt the thing in her chest that had braced for 4 winters come all the way unbraced. But it was not finished. There were faces yet to answer. Verna Renner was at the platform edge. She had come. Some said Silas asked her to come. Some said she'd come to see the laundress's terms read out and Verna's own authority stripped in public, which is a thing a proud woman will travel to witness so she can be properly angry about it after. She stood stiff as a fence post with her chin up. Silas came down off the platform and went to her. "Ma," he said. "That fourth term. The one you took as an insult in front of your neighbors. I want you to hear what it really was." "I know what it was," Verna said. "Everyone in 3 counties knows what it was." "No," Silas said. "You don't." He looked at her steady. "That term says one woman runs the house and can't be quietly pushed out of it. Della meant it for herself. But read it again, Ma. It's got no name in it but the rule. And the rule is, no woman in my house is ever again the one whose place can be taken while nobody's looking. That's you too. When I'm gone someday, that rule keeps a stranger from doing to you what a lean month near did to Cora. The term you thought stripped you is the one that can never strip you." Verna's chin came down a degree. She looked at Della. She looked a long time. "You could have said all that," Verna said, dry as a corn husk, in the kitchen. And Della, level, gave her the true answer. That's the one place it wouldn't have counted. Something passed over Verna's face then. Not warmth. Verna did not do warmth on demand, and Della would not have trusted it if she had. But something, the look of a proud woman recalculating a sum she'd been sure of for a week, and finding it, came out different. Jo had the tally book under her arm. She had carried it to the platform out of habit. She carried it everywhere. The book where she wrote down every promise made to her mother so that no man could ever again say he'd said something else. She had been keeping score since the day her mother married. She had a column for Silas Renner, and she had been waiting, the way a 14-year-old who has watched one betrayal waits, for the entry that would prove her right. She looked down at the book. She looked up at Silas, who had just sold his horse rather than touch a term. And Josephine Whitfield closed the tally book. She did not open it again. Cora did not understand the terms or the note or the second that was too long. Cora was 11. What Cora understood was the ranch, which she loved, and the kitchen, and the woman who had been cold to her mother for a month and who was standing now with her chin trembling just slightly at the edge of the crowd. Cora crossed the platform, and she slipped her small hand into Verna Renner's hand. Verna looked down at her. The term that had insulted Verna, the term Verna had carried like a splinter for a month, was the same term that had just been named the thing that would keep Cora in school through 16. The insult and the protection were the same sentence. And the child that sentence protected had just chosen, of everyone on that platform, to take the old woman's hand. Verna's fingers closed around Cora's. Slow, then not slow at all. The 810 pulled out. Nobody paid it any mind. They did the last of it at the ranch gate. Not on the platform. The platform was for the town, and the town had had its share. This part was just the two of them, in the blue end of the evening, with the girls already up to the house and the frost gone soft into ordinary cold. Silas stood on his side of the gate. Della stood on hers. Neither opened it yet. "I'd have signed it in blood," Silas said. "Any of it. All 4. I'd have signed it the day I took off my hat, if you'd asked for a pen." He shook his head. "I only didn't know you'd already read me. Read me clean through, on that platform, in 1 second, the way I couldn't read myself in a whole kitchen." Della looked at him over the gate. She had trusted records over men her whole widowed life. A record could not find itself a rich widow 2 towns over. A record did not hesitate over $4.50. She had married a man and kept her own account at the bank because she did not believe, all the way down, that a man could be trusted to keep himself. And here was one who had gone and made himself into a record. Read out loud. Witnessed, held, she reached out and lifted the latch. Stay, she said. One word. She gave it to him this time, the way he had given her his four, and it meant the same thing hers had meant, and he knew it, and he came through the gate. The door of it closed clean. 6 months on, it was early autumn in Ochre Springs, and the light came in low and gold through the parlor window of the Renner ranch house. The night wash line in the yard was empty. It had been empty since spring. Della still washed. A woman does not unlearn her own hands, but she washed for her own house now, her own family's linens on her own line. 75 cents a dozen shirts, a thing of the past she did not miss and did not pretend to. At the bank in Ochre Springs, the ranch accounts carried her name beside Silas's, both of them on the line, in her own firm hand. And the Meridian note, the $940 that had near cost a child a winter of sums, was stamped paid. Silas had met it with honest stock and never once with a term. At the window, in the low gold light, Joe sat teaching Cora her sums. 14 years old and already talking about the term after next, about staying on past 16 if the county would let a girl, about maybe teaching. The tally book had gone up on a high shelf and stayed there. Joe did not need to keep score anymore. That is the thing about a promise kept where the whole town can hear it. It does the remembering for you, so a child can put the book down and just be 14. On the parlor wall hung a framed page. Amos Teal had penned it out fair, on good paper, in his careful station agent's hand, a true copy of the back page of the Northern Pacific Freight Ledger. The 4 terms. The 4 answers. And under them, the date, and his own name as the man who wrote it down. It had started as a record of survival. A frightened woman's insurance against being forgotten on the strength of a promise, the way she'd been forgotten once by a man over a stove, with no one in the room but the stove. That is what it was when Amos first dipped his pen. It was not that anymore. Now it was just the truth of a home. On the wall of that home, where the girls could read it, and where Cora, who could read fine now and would keep on reading through 16, sometimes stopped and read term 1 out loud for no reason at all. In the kitchen that had been ice for a month and was warm now, 2 women worked bread. Verna Renner kneaded at one end of the board, Della at the other. They did not talk much. They did not need to. 19 years Verna had run this house, and it turned out the 4th term had never been about taking that from her. It had been about making sure no lean month or hard man could ever quietly take it from either of them. 2 women, and a kitchen that fit 2, and bread enough for a full table. Silas came in from the cold with the smell of horses on him, a plainer horse now. A working horse, the good saddle horse long sold and never once regretted. He hung his hat on his own nail. He looked at the 2 women at the board, and the 2 girls at the window, and the framed page on the wall, and he did the thing he had learned to do that cost him everything and saved him everything. He said it out loud. "Supper time," he said. "And I'm the luckiest man in the territory, and I don't care who hears me say it." Somebody had to hear it. That was the whole point. Here is the thing the platform taught them, the thing worth carrying out of Ochre Springs and into your own kitchen tonight. The promises that get broken are almost always the ones made where no one else can hear. So Della Whitfield made hers where a whole platform would hold him, and the man learned, one hard second too late and then just in time, to make his the very same way, out loud, on the record, where the town itself becomes the ledger. Love built with 2 pairs of hands, and a page on the wall that outlived every convenient memory in that town. If this story reached you, comment the town you're watching from. I want to see how far it travels. The crowd broke the way crowds always break. Slow, with talk. Amos Teal closed the freight ledger and set it back behind the counter like a thing that belonged there, which it did. Joe stood at the edge of the platform and closed the tally book. Not the closing of a thing abandoned, the closing of a thing finished. She tucked it under her arm and looked at Silas, and he bore the look, and she gave him one very small nod. That was all. That was everything. Cora had somehow gotten herself to Verna's side during the reading, the way water finds the low place without deciding to. She had slipped her hand into Verna's. Verna, who had come to see her authority stripped in the hearing of her neighbors, stood instead with a child's hand in hers and heard Silas say the fourth term had always protected her too. She did not cry. She was not the sort. But she held Cora's hand the whole walk back to the wagon, and she did not let go. And nobody mentioned it. At the ranch gate that evening, after the cold wagon ride and the silence that was easier now than it had been in months, Silas stopped. Della stopped beside him. He said, "I'd have signed it in blood. I only didn't know you'd already read me." She looked at the gate. The wood of it. The ranch beyond, hers now in every name and deed and account the territorial law would let a woman carry. "Stay," she said. Not a plea, not a condition. A word given to him, freely, the way she had never once been able to give it before. He stayed. The door of the story closed there, quiet, the way the best doors do. What remained, in the months that followed, was not drama, but work, which is the real shape of a life kept. The Meridian note was paid by November. Stock sold honestly, no child's year traded away, no term revised where no one could hear. The account at the Ochre Springs bank carried both names, and then, as the ledger grew and the hard seasons softened, it carried mostly hers, because she had the habit of numbers and Silas had the habit of cattle, and each found the other's habit worth something.